It's Thursday the 29th of January. From the MEN newsroom, this is Channel M's Lunchtime News, and these are today's headlines. The end of Gunchester. Police say they're winning the war on armed gangs.
Got to congratulate the people working in that area, both the public that are obviously helping with this, the community groups, the neighbourhood policing team and all the other organisations and the councils.
Also coming up, children and alcohol don't mix. Parents are told never to give under 15s a drink at all.
I don't think they should be allowed to get alcohol so easily as they are doing now, but our children have been brought up to handle it properly and they don't have a drink problem.
And a charity inspired by very personal grief that bought a new baby incubator for one of our hospitals.
Johnny and I just felt we wanted to do something because the staff here had been utterly fantastic and did everything they could for Harry.
Good afternoon. First this lunchtime, there are young people alive here in Manchester today who wouldn't have been if it wasn't for a major crackdown on gun crime. That from police who revealed the city shaking off its Gunchester image after a dramatic reduction in the number of shootings, particularly those that are gang-related.
It's a year ago today since teenager Louis Brathwaite was gunned down in a betting shop in Withington. Only a week earlier, Halton McCollin was shot in the head in a takeaway in Stretford. The intended target was believed to be a member of the notorious Doddington gang. Tensions and violence rose to such an extent that the gang threat in Manchester was defined for the first time as critical, a throwback to the old Gunchester days of the 1990s. The rise in gang-related gun crime led to a major crackdown by police, codenamed Operation Cougar. Officers opted for an intelligence-led crackdown. Council and community groups were signed up to help. Surveillance was used to identify safe houses and weapons caches. Gang gatherings were monitored. The results have been impressive. Figures released today by Greater Manchester Police show that between February and November 2007, there were 62 shootings in Hume, Longsight, Moss Side, Old Trafford and Stretford. 41 of these were gang-related. Last year, in the same period, there were 19 shootings in the same places, and just 3 of them were gang-related, a drop of 92%. For the first time in a decade, there was not a single firearms murder.
You know, you've got to congratulate the people working in that area, both the public that are obviously helping with this, the community groups, the neighbourhood policing team and all the other organisations and the councils. And it's just so great to hear on a grey January day that some good is happening in the world, that people are putting some effort in and dealing with such a difficult problem. So the first thing to say is I think it's great. I don't think that the police are the custodians of everything that comes to solving something like gang crime. I start with kids that are allowed to wander around the streets late at night who aren't caught up in a gang yet but will be unless their parents take some responsibility for where they are at night. You know, too often I've been going out looking at the issue of antisocial behaviour and you meet children and they are children and actually their parents have no idea where they are, or they say they have no idea where they are.
Home Secretary Jackie Smith is in Manchester today to hail the city's progress as an example to the rest of Britain and pledge extra cash so the work can continue. She's meeting Chief Constable Peter Fahey, who says there are young people walking the streets of Manchester today who would otherwise be in an early grave.
Well, we've had lots of comments on this story coming into the Manchester Evening News, our sister newspaper, this morning. Just a couple of them here for you now. One here, what will Manchester be known as now? Stabchester or Chavchester? Another one here from Elliot in Newton. Yet another load of fabricated figures and political spin from Greater Manchester Police. What a load of rubbish. Let us know what you think to these figures from Greater Manchester Police today. You can text us on 88821. Start your message with the word news, or you can email newsdesk@channelm.co.uk, and we'll have more on the Home Secretary Jackie Smith's visit to Manchester later in the programme. The teenager who murdered a dad of 3 from Bolton just hours after posting a Facebook message saying he felt like killing someone has been jailed for 17 years. The judge told Leon Ramsden it was a senseless, unprovoked murder that devastated the victim's family. Court heard how he'd been on a drink and drugs binge in the days leading up to the killing. With more, here's Nina Warhurst.
Paul Gilligan, a father of 3, was 31 years old when last July he was fatally stabbed. His killer, 19-year-old Leon Ramsden. The man branded the Facebook killer as just hours before taking Gilligan's life, he posted a message saying, "I feel like killing someone." Both men were here in the Pepper Alley bar in Bolton. They were seen chatting, shaking hands and even hugging. But the atmosphere was described as turning edgy as the men started play fighting. Leon Ramsden then left the bar and returned moments later before plunging a knife into Paul Gilligan's shoulder and then fatally into his heart. The court heard how Ramsden then left the bar and tried to enter another club but was refused entry for having blood on his hands. At another venue, a bouncer found a knife sheath on Ramsden and called the police. The murder which took place here was described in court as barefaced and particularly blatant. There's no apparent motive, but it's all the more chilling in light of the statement of intent posted on Facebook. And it's all the more shocking because this was one of 4 stabbings to take place in Greater Manchester that weekend, and Paul Gilligan was one of 12 people to lose their lives nationally that week at the hands of knife crime. Nina Warhurst, Channel M News.
A 19-year-old woman is fighting for her life in hospital after getting hit by a car in Wigan. The teenager was on Harrogate Street in Ince when she was struck by the Mini Cooper at around 6:30 last night. She's been treated for serious head injuries. Children under 15 shouldn't drink any alcohol. New advice has been given out by the country's chief medical officer. It's after figures showed a fifth of 13-year-olds are regularly having a drink. Mums and dads are now being advised never to allow youngsters a drink till they're at least 15, and even then it should be under supervision and no more than once a week. We've been asking parents in Eccles what they make of this.
Well, I think it's a bit silly the way they're tackling it, to put a ban on it completely. I don't think they should be allowed to get alcohol so easily as they are doing now, but our children have been brought up to handle it properly and they don't have a drink problem.
Oh yeah, when they come in drinking and there's no discipline for them, they must be agreeing with what they're doing, so that's why they continue to do it. I mean, my kids don't do it. Ellie, come here. My kids wouldn't do it, so that's what I feel about it, yeah.
Well, there's nothing you can do to stop it, because at the end of the day, if the parents are not bothered, then they're just taking the parents' lead, aren't they? If the parents are not going to stop it, then who else can stop it?
I work with like 12 to 17-year-olds myself and see the trouble that it gets them into, you know, and it's not nice when you see them sat there with the parents and stuff and they're really upset and they realise what they've done, so it's not good really.
More to come on this story with Andy Crane tonight from 5, when we'll also be hearing from a project which deals with youngsters here in Manchester who have alcohol problems. And we also want your comments on this as well. What do you think of this new advice? How much alcohol do you let your children have? You can let us know on the text 88821. Start your message with the word news, or you can email us as well, newsdesk@channelm.co.uk. We'll go through some of your comments later. The leader of Trafford Council, Susan Williams, has announced she'll be stepping down in May. Councillor Williams has been at the helm for 7 years and will continue her role as ward councillor, but says she's putting all her energies into fighting the parliamentary seat in Bolton West before a possible election next year. A campaign to get more girls involved in science and manufacturing jobs is starting. It's part of plans to stabilise the manufacturing industry, which is being hit hard by the recession, as Beverly Walkton now reports.
North Manchester High School for Girls is a specialist science college. It's hoped visiting professionals in the sciences will teach the girls that it's not all about jobs for the boys.
It's inspiring us to go into engineering and stuff because it's showing how important it is and the role that you have to take.
I mean, what's your idea now of somebody who fits that role?
Like, it don't always have to be men. When you say you picture like engineers, you just picture in your head men, but it's not, it's women as well.
If the UK doesn't have a buoyant manufacturing industry, then investors will take their money elsewhere. It's a situation we're facing during the economic downturn, but the government's looking ahead and wants to make sure there are enough skilled workers for when the recovery begins, which is why girls are being encouraged into roles traditionally taken on by men.
You're a female in a male environment, and particularly because the majority of people that work in my factory are all men and they're all skilled engineers, it is quite difficult.
Now, you must be one of only a few women in this industry. What's it like?
I mean, it is a challenge, but I wouldn't have come into this industry if I wasn't looking for a challenge. I enjoy my work, and at the moment, there's Rolls-Royce, who I work for, are doing a lot to encourage more girls to get into engineering, and it's working quite well.
The latest redundancy figures show female workers are being hit hardest in the recession, double the number of men. That's because jobs in retail and hospitality, where redundancies are rife at the moment, attract more women. It's hoped campaigns like this will guard the future of the next generation. Beverly Walkden for Channel M News.
Time now to take a check out the lunchtime sports headlines with those. Here's Mike Bradley.
Thank you, James. And it's with football we begin and a look at last night's Premier League game between Wigan and title hopeful Liverpool at the JJB Stadium. Sam Goodman has your details.
Wigan manager Steve Bruce said it was always going to be a difficult match, and a good move from the away side looked to have been broken down when Wigan keeper Mike Pollett forced Yossi Benayoun into a tight angle. Somehow, the Israeli kept his balance and managed to score just before half-time. In the second half, Wigan battled back, and Jason Koumas's run in the box saw him cleanly taken out by Lucas. No question over it being a penalty. And it was debutant striker Mido who stepped up to equalise, and 7 minutes from time. This result has certainly dented the chances of Liverpool winning the Premier League and has also kept Wigan 7th in the table.
Manchester City are up to 9th following their 2-1 win over Newcastle. Craig Bellamy netting the winner on his debut. While Bolton and Blackburn, they fought out an entertaining 2-2 draw at Ewood Park. And we'll have highlights from that game with Sam in our news bulletin from 5 o'clock. And we'll also be hearing from Ricky Hatton, who's in town today, to release further details of his fight against Manny Pacquiao. That's scheduled for Las Vegas in May. And staying with boxing for a couple of moments, it's just been announced Manchester's Matthew Hall will challenge Bradley Price for the Commonwealth light middleweight title at the MEN Arena in March. Andrew Flintoff won't be taking any part in today's game against the West Indies A team at Warner Park in St Kitts. That gets underway shortly, but he is expected to return to action in the first official test against the West Indies at Sabina Park on Wednesday. And finally, for now, Spurs look set to hijack City's move for Rocky Santa Cruz and are believed to be preparing a £20 million bid. While a little further down the football food chain in League One, Stockport County Chief Executive Mark Maguire has once again denied the club are heading into administration, saying money from the transfer of Anthony Pilkington has eased the Hatters' financial worries. That's it from me for now, but please make sure you join Sam with some more sports for you at 5 o'clock.
Thanks very much, Mike, for the update. There's plenty more still to come on the Lunchtime News, including more on the visit of Home Secretary Jackie Smith to Manchester. Details after the break. Hello again, welcome back. This is the Lunchtime News from Channel M. We're on air till 1 o'clock with all the news from Greater Manchester. Log on as well to our website whenever you want to watch our latest reports, channelm.co.uk. On there at the moment, the outcome of an industrial tribunal between a nurse who was sacked after speaking to the media about NHS cuts and her bosses. And also, don't miss the one about cows that produce more milk if they're given names like Daisy and Buttercup. We've been to a dairy farm to investigate that. You can see it at channelm.co.uk. Back to one of our other main headlines now, and the teenager who murdered a dad of 3 from Bolton just hours after posting a Facebook message saying he felt like killing someone has been jailed for 17 years. The judge told Leon Ramsden it was a senseless, unprovoked murder that devastated the victim's family. Court heard how he'd been on a drink and drugs binge in the days leading up to the killing. We've just had this reaction in from outside court to that sentencing from Paul Gilligan's family.
This youth has never shown remorse. And he felt he was untouchable. He knew he'd killed a man, one loved by many, in a heartless, shocking, cowardly stabbing. Paul didn't deserve this, nor would he have anticipated such brutality. He is greatly missed and was such a happy, social, family man. We will never get over his death. Thank you.
The Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, is in Manchester this lunchtime. One of the main points of her visit is to talk up the importance of bringing in the new ID cards. They'll be available from this autumn, and Manchester could be one of the first areas in the UK to get them, as Ben Bland has been finding out.
This is a controversial scheme, and Manchester is one of the areas that's being looked at to trial it. Now, Home Secretary, Manchester seems a bit of an odd choice. It's got some of the most deprived areas in the country. Do you think people will volunteer, really, to pay £30 for a card they don't necessarily want and they don't need?
Well, of course, identity cards and the identity card scheme is already up and running. We're already issuing cards to foreign nationals. That's helped people in Manchester and across the country to prove who they are and what they have the right to do, including to work. And it's also helped us actually to catch people who don't have the right to be in the country. We'll be issuing already, as we've said, identity cards at Manchester Airport from later on this year. And we think, and I've been talking to young people about it this morning, that having a safe and secure way to prove your identity actually is something that people want and that they need. And we'll be looking at areas where we can offer people that opportunity. And given that Manchester's already made a good start, I certainly think that Manchester will be in the running to be in one of those areas where we look to see and demonstrate all the benefits that I think this service can offer.
Now, at first, it is going to be voluntary. What's the point, though, of the scheme if it's not compulsory? Because those who you want to keep tabs on aren't going to be the people who'll come forward and say, you know what, I want my details on a database and I want a card.
Well, the first thing that young people have been saying to me today is that even now, they have to prove their identity quite often every day, certainly every week. At the moment, what they're using are insecure and quite often inconvenient methods, people taking their passports out and around with them, people who need to open a bank account, perhaps needing a utility bill, which they don't have. So the first thing about ID cards is actually they are a much safer and more secure and more convenient way of proving your identity at a time when all of us need to do it more and more.
And can you give a guarantee today that people's data will not be lost, left on trains, be accessed by people who shouldn't access it at a time when people don't necessarily have that much confidence in the way the government handles people's data?
Well, I can give an absolute guarantee that this is top of our priorities for implementing the scheme. That's why we'll have an independent scheme commissioner who will hold government and the scheme to account for the safety security it puts in place. That's why we will also put in some of the highest levels of technical and security around the individuals who are doing it. And that's why as well, I think actually it is more secure if you've linked your personal details to your biometrics like your fingerprint and your face than it can ever be at the moment when we're not able to do that.
But no guarantee that it will definitely not go missing?
Well, no, I can guarantee that this is absolutely our top priority and it is more secure to have your information linked to your biometric than it can ever be at the moment.
OK, Home Secretary, thank you very much. The scheme will be trialled here in Manchester if it gets the go-ahead, and the plan is then, if all goes well, to roll out the scheme across the rest of the country by 2011.
Thanks very much, Ben. Well, we can get some more on this story now, and with us is one of the main campaigners around here against ID cards, Dave Page. Thank you for coming in. We've heard from the Home Secretary that the benefits of ID cards are just around the corner. She's really talking up all the good things about them. Shouldn't we be supporting them, given what she's telling us about what they'll do?
Well, she does keep talking about these benefits, but she's not very clear about exactly what they are and whether a £20 billion ID card database, which will track everyone in the country, is worth these alleged benefits that she's proposing.
Now, whenever we talk to people about ID cards, many people say if you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about carrying an extra piece of plastic in your wallet. Is that not the case?
Well, if you look at the government's record on data losses, the 8 million families who had their details lost by HMRC and their bank account details just left blowing in the wind or lost on a data stick, these people have done nothing wrong, and all of a sudden they now have to fear identity theft.
What's the concern particularly about all the data being held in a central database that you have?
Oh, it's obvious that the government's own expert into the ID card scheme commissioned a report that came up with 10 things that the ID card scheme should do, and the government scheme breaks all 10 of them. And the most important of those is that the government should only collect as little data as it needs for the purposes it wants to achieve. And since it's not being clear about the purposes it's trying to achieve, it really has no justification putting all this information in one place where it's vulnerable to hackers, criminal insiders. The government has gone on record as saying they cannot keep our information safe, so they shouldn't be collecting it in the first place.
OK, Dave Page from No to ID, thank you very much for joining us this lunchtime. The latest figures on house prices show here in the northwest. They fell by 1.7% in December to just over £122,000. It means almost 11% was wiped off the value of a typical home around here last year. Nationally, the drop was slightly more than that, at 2% for the month and 13.5% for the year. Hayward-based JD Sports and JJB Sports from Wigan have been named the worst stores in the country for customer service. A report by Which magazine says customers don't think that they're pleasant shopping environments. Currys and WH Smith have also been criticised. Top of the table are Waitrose and John Lewis, with budget supermarkets Aldi and Lidl also featuring in the top 10. Next, and we've heard lots of headlines about, in fact, I'm very sorry, that's the wrong introduction to the report there. Wythenshawe Hospital, the maternity unit there, has taken delivery of a new incubator paid for by couples who've lost babies. The families both decided that the best way to overcome their grief was by raising money.
Back in 2005, my husband and I lost our eldest son, Harry. He was born at the end of a perfectly normal pregnancy and a perfectly healthy, normal labour. And he lived for 9 hours before we lost him. And the charities really come about from there. Johnny and I just felt we wanted to do something because the staff here had been utterly fantastic and did everything they could for Harry. Back of the sort of unexpected publicity from that, Sarah and Mark Johnson, who had lost their little boy, Jock, at 23 weeks, read about us and decided that they wanted to help, and so Harry and Jock's appeal came about. And so far we've raised about £45,000, and that's been used to present, this is the second incubator. We previously presented an incubator back in 2006, and we've just confirmed the purchase of an infant warming station, which comes in at around £11,000. Well, they're important to the hospital in that they provide the most up-to-date equipment for sort of poorly babies. The staff here are absolutely fantastic, and it's good to know that if you have a poorly baby, not only are they getting the best staff care, but they're getting sort of the best equipment to give the babies the best chance of making a full and healthy recovery.
Now, it's not too cold today, but looking further ahead, there is some snow on the horizon. With the forecast, here's Michelle Eagleton.
Been a fairly dry day across Greater Manchester. We're seeing highs of between 7 and 9. Really good news if you are planning on doing something outdoors, because for the majority of the day it is going to remain dry. We're just going to see a few showers later on this evening, but really not a lot to worry about at all. In fact, let's take you through the day and show you how it really did pan out. We saw a little bit of a breeze this morning coming in from the westerly direction. Wasn't too cold though, as I say, those temperatures nicer than they have been over the past couple of days. Then this afternoon, about 2 o'clock, we're going to see some sunshine creeping its way through, so make the most of it. It's going to be out till about 5 o'clock, and then it should cloud over somewhat and then bring with it those showers, as I mentioned, tonight. And then overnight we are staying with those showers, because unfortunately, being the bearer of doom and gloom, Friday is going to be very wet indeed, so make sure you've got your brolly packed. Saturday is looking fairly cloudy but dry. Sunday, the best day to do something outdoors. It's going to be fairly sunny, but look at that picture for Monday. It's going to snow, I think, so make sure you wrap up.
This is Thursday's Lunchtime News, the top stories. There's been a dramatic fall in the number of gang-related shootings here in Manchester. Only 3 were reported last year after an operation to crack down on the problem started, and police say as a result there are young people alive today who might not have been. It's 17 years behind bars for the teenager who stabbed to death dad of 3 Paul Gilligan in Bolton last year. Leon Ramsden was told his attack on the dad of 3 was a senseless and unprovoked murder. We'll have more on the visit of Home Secretary Jackie Smith to Manchester in the early evening news with Andy Crane tonight from 5. But for now, from me and the rest of the Lunchtime team, have a good afternoon. Bye-bye for now.